Welcome to Guardians of the Data. I'm your host, Ward Balzerzak. Each episode will explore the passions, expertise, and real-world experiences of security leaders who are helping the future of data security and governance. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centra. To learn more about our AI-powered data security platform, please visit centra.io. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of Guardians of the Data. My guest today has over 20 years of experience across energy, manufacturing, and defense industries. He currently serves as a trusted advisor to executive leaders and as a senior enterprise architect for critical infrastructure. Cory Zaner, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Welcome. This is my first time on your show. I'm looking forward to doing it and walking through this process.
Glad you joined, sir. So, in your professional opinion, what's the biggest data security challenge organizations are facing?
I think probably the biggest is knowing what they don't know what they don't know. So a lot of data is almost hidden, right? So it could be scattered from SaaS, cloud, on-prem. In our environment, we have a heavy ICS or OT environment. It could be, I was even talking to one engineer, and they had it in physical notebooks. So when I think about data, I don't think about just data in the cloud. A lot of people or a lot of companies they focus on, oh, let's secure your data in SaaS, or let's secure your data in the cloud. And our CISO has the motto of, hey, if we lose that one important thing, this is as big as risk as losing 7,000 items or whatnot. So it's a pie in the sky to say, hey, we're going to have 100% coverage on all of our data everywhere and have data security.
Totally agree. And I think you mentioned SaaS and cloud and on-prem. Once upon a time, I think back when you and I started our careers, it was relatively easy, right? You had your data center, you had your laptops, and you mentioned it, your physical assets, right? Notebooks and pieces of paper and all that. And now it's crazy, right? With hybrid environments. I think every organization, I don't know if there's going to be an exception out there. Every organization is going to be hybrid in some way, shape, or form. So, with that, Cory, you're currently an architect. How do folks look to start solving that, right? How do they start to get their hands around this data real estate problem that every organization's having?
That's a good question. I could tell you the direction I gave my team was, hey, if you're doing if you have kids, or even if you're in school, right, you don't want to zero, you don't want to turn in anything. So whenever our children come in, or our high school students or middle school, they come in and they don't even turn in the assignment, they get a zero. That's not where you start. I think a lot of companies, at least we did too, we said, hey, we have these tools, we have these programs, we have these policies, but we know that we're not going to get 100% coverage. So back to your initial question is, first, should we start with data classification, right? So, hey, what are my tiers of data? I have a prior DoD background too. It was the top secret, confidential and unclassified, right? Not confidential. That's the business. But so first, you start segregating your data, and you also want to find your jewels. Find out what really makes your company tick. Think about KFC, right? They're probably going to protect their chicken formula faster than they would protect their, I don't know, maybe their email or some other data. So I think once you have that, I think that's the perfect place to start. So, government, just simple classification, user education. We could wrap around all the tools that we can, but without the people understanding that, hey, we need to protect our data, that's probably the first thing.
I like that data classification, and I'm going to say I like that for many reasons. But I've actually had two conversations already today. You're now the third that you brought up data classification, and I was sharing a horror story from my own past with one of the individuals. I joined an organization. My initial remit was kind of deploying DLP, right? Really the start. They didn't have a good DLP program. It's like, all right, fine. Like, I'm not going to call it DLP program. I'm going to call it data security, right? Yada, 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 all that stuff. And a couple of weeks in, they said, hey, congratulations. You also own data classification. Lucky you. I was, all right, that's fun.
Completely different animal, isn't it?
Different animal, but then I started digging into the past and I inherited a mess. The mess I inherited was they had tried to do this for 2 years prior to me joining. Tried and failed, tried and failed, tried and failed. I said, well, what the heck? What's going on? They had tools. They had some conversations. So since you said data classification, that's the best place to start. What are your thoughts on how to actually be successful with that? Because there's a lot of companies that say, yes, I need to classify my data. I agree. Let's do it. But they don't know how to actually be successful.
Yeah, first you want to align with a program, like like we align with NIST, right? And NIST has a really good outline. It says, hey, this type of data is confidential. This type of data is restricted, and come up with those 3 or 4 tags, restricted, where someone can look at it and say, hey, oh yeah, well, this is not. I don't want this public, right? I don't want this to be everywhere because it's my employees' salary information, right? So, oh, let me tag it with that. And so first, make it color coded. People love colors, right? Red, stop; yellow, caution; green, good, right? I think very the stoplight approach. I think that's and also there's a lot of, and I don't want to dive into tools, but we certainly can a little bit. But think about user education, user prompts. That's probably the hardest thing. And the mindset is to, hey, you're responsible for classifying your data, not the IT guy, not the person that implemented the system. It's the owner that's meant to classify their own data because they know what it's worth. And hey, worst case, you put a higher tag on it than it's supposed to be, right? But that's probably the first place is the user, because I mean, data security is all about the user tagging it appropriately.
Yeah, I like that, and I really like what you said too. Education, I think that's incredibly important because I've always said to folks as they're kind of building out their data classification, like if your user has to get out a secret decoder ring to understand how to classify the data, you've probably failed. You've probably made it one of two things: you made it too complex, or you're relying on maybe AI these days, right? You're assuming that AI is going to fix your complexity problem when it comes to data classification, which I suppose, right, with new technologies, that could be the way to do it. I mean, I've had that conversation earlier. Well, we're Tuesday today, so earlier this week, I had that conversation where they're like, I see this as an AI problem. Okay, maybe we can use AI to help. Let's see. Let's discover that.
So it's I just went to a local HasMug conference here in Houston, and I got a shirt, and it said, garbage. They had a picture of a person holding poop, coming through the AI, coming through the ringer. I'll see if I can find it. Coming through the ringer, and at the end, it was the same person, but they were holding this poop-shaped rainbow. So, meaning garbage in, garbage out. AI can make things prettier, right? So, yeah, no. So definitely, um, and we could definitely solve problems with technology, but I don't think we could change the mindset of people with technology. So that's why my boss always hits me, people, process, and I think that's with ISTACA and NIST and everyone else. You always want to focus on your people and your process first, and that's whenever you line up your technology. But but going back to aligning with a program, I think that's the key part. Pick a framework, right? Whether it's ISO or homemade, NIST. That way, whenever you go to the users, you're not arguing. They're not arguing with your ideas. Let them argue with the NIST of the world or the ISACAs or these frameworks. Let them and use that, and then scope that according to your company. I think that's the best place to really start. That way, you always have a framework of reference.
I like that. I like that. And I think we could probably take that advice across most things in security, right? Like we could either make it up ourselves, but why? You know, they're super great frameworks that people have already created. A lot of mind share and energy went into that. You know, start there because I'm sure you've dealt with this, Cory. Like that resonates with executives. Hey, we're gonna do this thing and we're aligning it to an industry standard like NIST. And it's like, oh, okay, it's not just Cory's idea. Like, cool, let's go do it.
Exactly, because I mean, really, and that's shifting over to this new role really had me focus on the what and why, and because a lot of companies are going to MSPs as well. They're not focused on the how anymore, right? They're focused on the what and the why. And I think when you take that approach, especially with data security, and let people know that, hey, if this data got out, I like to ask people whenever I'm, working their data or their project, if this got out on the news, if you saw this on the 11 o'clock news, what would be your reaction? If they're like, I wouldn't care, well then green light it, go, right? No problem. If they're like, oh no, so maybe that's a red, stop what you're doing. So I think the color code, I really like what you said about overcomplicating, because I think some of the data classification schemes we've seen are like 10, 20 tags, and it's like, oh, tag to the subtag to the tag to the tag, and it's like, dude, just keep the central red, green, yellow, green, red, red, yellow, green, press on.
Yeah, yeah. So the KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid, right? We should definitely employ that in just about everything we do. But I too have seen the overcomplication in tags. You said the subtags, yes, been there, seen that a few times. Where I typically go with that when I see it, I go, I'm kind of like a kid. I've got a 5-year-old, right? I do the whole why game. We have 12 labels. Why? Well, because of this. Why? Right? Over and over. Why? And you finally get them to start like questioning themselves. Was like, because that's best practice. No, in fact, it's not. And let's talk about it. Like, I try to get people to think about, where are you going with the classification? Are you doing it because your regulatory compliance says you have to do it? Okay, cool. Like, great, you're checking a box. Or are you doing it because you're going to feed, I don't know, downstream security controls, DLP, encryption, tokenization, whatever? Oh, yeah, we're going to do that. Cool. Let's talk about how that's actually done at that point.
Yeah, that sounds cool, but you put it in front of the user, and they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right, right. And it goes back to the education that you mentioned. I think that's the super important piece. So let's bring that full circle to what we said before. A lot of people now are saying, I'm just gonna use AI, I'm gonna use automation to classify. My personal opinion here, I'm curious about yours. My personal opinion is, technology wise, that sounds great, right? A tool is likely going to be more accurate than a person 9 times out of 10. However, what I think is missing is the education piece, because now the people aren't going to be data sensitivity aware. They're just going to do what they're going to do. Everything else be darned. And it's going to be over reliance on the tool to actually do the next step. What say you? What are your thoughts?
No, I'm with you, because I mean, a lot of times, I mean, even if we think about AI, I mean, there's a lot of risks to AI. We see prompt injections and poisoning and all those other things. That's at a different level. But whenever we think about AI and we read about the issues, it's typically person uploaded document or a person typed in this data. AI is not going to save them for what they typed into AI. So they really have to educate. They have to know that, hey, I don't want to put in my KFC super secret chicken here into open AI. But they might think that, hey, this is my tenant, it's secure. But yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
I think you are. I think we're saying the same thing, actually. Like, if people don't actually have an idea of what is sensitive, and we're just relying on technology to slap a label, or maybe the label's not even visible. I love your idea of color coding. If you don't have a visual indicator to say, hey, beware, right? Yellow, caution, red, stop, beware, you're about to do this, or just in time prompts that popped up. Like, if you don't have any of that, your user awareness is likely going to be moot. They're not going to know what's going on. They're going to do whatever they want to do.
And we could definitely rely on AI and tools, and they're a huge help. I know you work for a strong, data security company, and they can help a lot. But they cannot help. They cannot tell us what our secure data is. Like where I work, we do a lot of research and development, and your particular AI or no one's data security program product can come in and say, hey, you should really look at this data because we understand your business and we understand that this is what's making you guys a lot of money. Or the KFC example. I think now they could pattern things like, hey, this is social security numbers and PII, and this looks like it might be sensitive. It's got 30 usernames in it, but they can never point out the KFC super secret recipe because to AI it's just more words.
Well, you'd hope not. It's not super secret if AI can come in and tell you it.
Yeah. But I do think if you train it, if that user says, hey, this is data that I have, that our company values, and says, hey, it looks like this, then AI can say, hey, now I pick up that pattern and I could find other data that looks like this, but I don't think I could come in and solve that people problem.
Agreed. So we talked a lot about data classification, and we started off this episode you saying, the big problem is, really you don't know what you don't know, which again, I think we could say that about just about all of security. But okay, we got data classification. What's next? Where should people go after they've started to classify their data?
Well, I think about data retention, but let's leave that as a whole nother mountain to climb. So specifically around data security, then they need to figure out, once you have those tiers, what should and you shouldn't do whenever you're in that tier. So let's just go back to the stoplight example. If I mark something red, restricted, should I be able to email it? Should I be able to download it? Should I be able to share it with Billy? Should I? And what you do is, again, you go back to that standard that you initially selected, whether it's NIST or whoever. You say, hey, what does that standard or that policy say about downloading data at this tier, right? And that's whenever you could shape your tools to match your program, and you educate people and say, hey, did you know if you're marking this thing red, you're not going to be able to email it, you're not going to be able to download it, there's going to be a tag across the header, right? And you and I haven't even talked structured versus unstructured data. Yeah. I mean, right now we're talking user document. So I guess if we back up a little bit more, I would say start with the unstructured, the M365 stack first. Your Outlook, your emails, your work, if you're a Gmail. I don't know if people are using G Suite. I don't hear that almost anywhere anymore.
Oh, there's a lot of people out there for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, but so whatever your consumer facing or your customer facing system is, for your users to send emails or do documents, that's where I would start. And I'm pretty sure I get them backwards sometimes. For sure, that's unstructured data. And then once you have the data classification, and then that's whenever you start diving into your structured data, your SQL databases, your file shares, right? Your storage accounts, everything else.
1,000,000% behind you on that. That is something that I've advised a lot of companies on when I was in the consulting role. Like, where do I start? And you got a lot of folks who are like, oh, we're going to secure all of the things, the boil the ocean approach, which is, you're right, we're going to do all the things,
even data retention.
Yeah, we're all the things. And I always say, like, you actually said it very well. Let's look at your M365 environment. Let's look at your G Suite environment, because chances are that's where a lot of your user-generated content is going. That's being, created from scratch, copied and pasted, transformed, whatever. It's where it's going to be. Because I am of the opinion, may not be a popular opinion, but I am of the opinion. Yeah, I've seen this plenty of times in my career. It's not just me saying it out loud. That generally speaking, getting your arms around structured data is easier. Structured data repositories, and when I say that, I'm talking about databases. Like it's easier. It's not easy. Nothing in security is easy. It's easier.
Why is it easier? Let's in my opinion, because it's IT owned and it's an IT thing, and the customer never sees it. So you say, you know what? I'm going to remove the customer from the equation, and I'm going to make the decision. But that in data security, that's not the proper way. The proper way is the data owner. The data owner classifies it. But yeah, finish your thought. Sorry.
No, no, I completely agree with you. I was gonna say that, it's IT owned. Usually you've got, some sort of like DB admin. If it's a homegrown application, you've likely built the database. Now, yes, I will fully say out loud for the audience, Ward, you're talking crazy. That assumes good governance, good hygiene. Yes, if you got bad governance, if you got bad hygiene, if the person who created it is no longer with the company, yes, you could have an absolute nightmare. But that nightmare is likely still a little bit easier than getting your arms around your unstructured data.
That's whenever whatever tool you want, whatever shiny object that you bought, that you went to a conference and you saw, that's that's where it could play nice, and you could do good. And the user might see a new banner on their app or something, but they don't really care. I mean, they don't care until they try to download or share. But you haven't changed that mindset for the user. That's why, and that's why we have selected to go almost last. Not saying that the data is not as important, but saying that the most effective way is to start the user-facing applications first.
I like that. I like that. All right. So, I mean, get data classification, color code it, get the awareness out there. You then went to the next part was just, next steps. What are we actually going to do about it? If you have highly confidential, what can you do? And when you said that, I was laughing. I might have been laughing on video. I was definitely laughing in my brain because I remember very clearly a conversation I had at one of the companies I worked for. I was working at the legal team. Surprise, lawyers, gotta love lawyers. And they said, well, Ward, why wouldn't I just mark everything highly confidential and call it a day? And I said, you could. I'm not saying you can't, but you're not gonna be able to email it. And I kind of got that weird look. I was like, look, I forget the person's name. It doesn't matter. Like, look, well, Sally, you can do that. You can absolutely do that. Nothing wrong with it. But the downstream security controls are going to prevent you from actually sending that externally. Or it's going to prevent you from sending it externally to anybody but so-and-so. Maybe it's, whatever B2B relationship we have going on.
Maybe it's the Gmail account, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah, no Gmail. Well, we have some customers Gmail. Okay, like that's cool. Either give me that information so we can, build kind of a trusted list, or don't mark everything highly confidential if it's not actually.
Because it aligns back with your standard or your policy you've adopted. You just say, "Hey, we've adopted this." Now, hopefully, when you built your program, you didn't do it in a bubble with you and your security manager. You pulled in legal, and so this whenever you said that, hopefully it wasn't a shock to them. You're what? You're doing what?
And actually, going back to what I told you, I inherited data classification. 2 years it failed. That was actually why I started talking to legal and HR and those teams. Like, hey, like, I'm Ward. Nice to meet you. I inherited this mess. Like, why is it a mess? And like, well, what are you talking about? I actually had that a few times. What are you talking about? Like, okay, here's why it failed. Like, nobody talked to you. Let's fix that.
Do we need legal and HR involved in a multi-million-dollar company whenever we're talking data classification? The science point to yes.
My 3 go-tos for every data classification issues, my 3 initial go-tos, obviously it's the entire business, with 3 starting, is going to be legal. Got to have the lawyers, even though you love to hate them. Got to have the lawyers. Privacy, because a lot of things go back to privacy regulations, and sometimes it's the same team, sometimes it's legal and privacy, and certainly HR, because HR touches a lot of that data, but also they're generally going to help you, hopefully, if you have a good HR department, help you with some of those, employee trainings, and also the bad side of it, which is, what are we going to do with these people if they violate the policy, right? What are going to be the HR repercussions?
And you're right, and you've also formed now. Hopefully, you don't meet once. Hopefully, you've formed some sort of committee. This is I think some people might call it a privacy committee or a data committee or whatever you want to call it. try to meet with them. So whenever there are a change to classifications or a change, hey, we need to move this data type to restricted, or we're going to push something. So they're educated. So whenever you sit in front of them and say, well, you don't want to mark everything restricted, like you said, you can't not be emailed. They'll say, oh, well, yeah, I know. Well, that's because we worked with lawyer so and so, and we agree. So yeah, I think some people call them steering committees.
Steering committee, yeah, I've heard that a few times, and it's what's interesting on that is yes, like listeners, if you're not building some sort of governance committee, a steering committee, whatever, like please do so. I think one of the hardest parts about building that I've seen, it's like any other new shiny object, any other new thing. You get a lot of interest up front, right? A lot of people like, oh yeah, I want to help, I want to help. But the interest dies out, right? And it's like anything in corporate America. Nobody wants a lot of meetings on their calendars. Like, oh, do I really have to attend that thing? I think what I've seen is you have to drive ownership into each and every one of those individuals, a sense of ownership, extreme ownership, if you will. Like, hey, like we will not be successful if you are not in that virtual chair helping out with this committee.
Well, because we need, in your example, we need privacy input. Um,
Right.
there are privacy lawyers out there. That is their sole bread and butter. And you give them a couple compliments. You tell them how important, everybody cares about privacy. And HR data is number one, and that's our most critical data. Yeah, you have to lift them up a little bit. I think that's kind of what you're saying. Keep them excited, and that's where I think our as security professionals, that's where our role comes in to let them know, hey, this is the risk of avoidance, and this is the value that you're bringing to those committees. We just cannot be a fly on the wall, especially a good security professional.
Completely agree. And I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Good security professional. There's a lot of security professionals out there. There's a lot of security professionals that don't like to do what we're talking about, which is partner and talk to individuals. So, Cory, you're an architect. You are working with executive leaders in your company, and I'm sure other executives out there. How have you built some of those skills, some of those soft skills that typical security folks don't like doing? Let's be real; they don't like dealing with public. How have you built some of that up to actually be successful in your role?
That's a really good question. I think a lot of my military experience has taught me to communicate well. And like my son, he's active duty Air Force, and he's like, well, Dad, what type of things I want to get out? What type of thing? Soft skills are number one. I think the Bible's pretty clear too. I don't want to make this a biblical show, but hey, hear more than you thought. This kind of doesn't apply to us on this show, right? Because we're talking, but try to listen. Like whenever you inherited the data security program, it sounded like you went to them and you listened. You didn't just say, "Hey, data security is so important. Follow Lord Ward around, and we're going to do data security because I said so." But and also try to look at their point of view, right? So I bet you if they say, "Well, data security is important, but I really want to email my data," well, you can as long as you classify it correctly. Um, yeah, it's not an easy skill, and you're right. I've seen a lot of we'll call them IT folks that just it's very hard to communicate. But I think just listen more, try to talk a little less, and try to go in open minded and just look put on a different pair of glasses whenever you're talking to the lawyers and the HRs. Yeah, because HR they're employee front, so maybe they go to a trade show and they try to recruit people, and you say, "Hey, you can't use your iPad." It's like, well, this is how I'm showing new employees how to enroll and stuff. And if the security guy says, "No, well, NIST says you can't do this," and it's like, well, not everything. There is a way to put too much security in things that we do. It's just like we could lock it down. You can't do anything. We could shut down the internet, right? But you still need to do your job.
I like what you said there, and I'm gonna do a call. I have not done this yet, but I'm gonna make a call out to one of the listeners, Andrew Zizzo out there. You're gonna love him. I'm about to say the phrase that you're always calling me on. Be the department of no, KNOW, and not no, NO, right? Like,
My boss would also like that too. That's kind of his thing as well. Is hey, we're gonna be the department of no and know what you're doing. Enable people to work securely, and that's what the CISO of AWS said. He went on and he's like, hey, we need to enable people to work securely.
yeah, yeah. If you're just simply saying no for the fun of it, and I was there when I first started in security, I had a lot of fun just saying no all the time. Like, why not? I can tell people no, and why? Because I'm security. But guess what? It wasn't successful, right? They were going to find or try to find ways around the controls at that point. Cory, you've been in the industry for over 20 years at this point. You've been in multiple industries. What was your journey? How did you get to where you are today?
So I actually started working on printers and copiers out of high school and kind of felt like a dead end job. This was in the early 2000s, Y2K, everything else. But it was right after 9/11. I said, hey, I want to join the Air Force, right? So I joined the Air Force as a network communication cryptography person, right? So with the basic training, almost a year at tech school, learning electronics and networking, OSI model, servers, infrastructure, POTS, plain old telephone systems. And then, you know, throughout my career, the first 3 years I was in South Japan working in top secret environments. Really cool, doing SIGINT stuff and really helping the mission. The last 3 years in the Air Force, I was working on a drone program called Predator. It's when the Predator and the UAVs, they're popular now with what's going on in Iran. And then I got out. I got a really good role with Raytheon. So I was selected for that role. We called it cloud security architecture, which and it just maybe 5 to 6 years ago. I was like, what's cloud security, right? Why don't you just the security guy? But really, we focused in on kind of like you said, the data security, the 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 the, the business outside the firewall, identity security. So I built that program. I had a really strong team of architects. So we built up the program again. We started from the what does NIST say, and then we worked our way down. And then here recently, there's a reorg, and they created a new division, enterprise architecture, and that's where I've been for the last two years. I really like it. The enterprise architecture. I have a really strong security focus. I'm the only security person on there, but so I work hand in hand with the CISO, CIO, right, to kind of help shape that direction. But it's given me a different view for the business, which a lot of security or IT people don't understand the business at all. So it's been an interesting ride. So I'm curious to see what's next or what's. Yeah, I'm still young, so I still got a couple more years.
Love it. Quite the journey. So, Cory, if folks want to connect with you, is LinkedIn the best way to do so, or is there any other good spots?
I like LinkedIn. I think a lot of people use it. I've been to a lot of conferences. I think people really encourage LinkedIn posting, and that's kind of it's the Facebook for professionals. I mean, uh, there's things like Discord. I don't really go on Discord. I think it gets busy, but you get taking a long time to catch up. But yeah, I mean, connect with with me on LinkedIn. Always a little weary of some of the salespeople that just want to connect, and 2 minutes later you have something in your inbox. But there, it's amazing, Ward. I mean, you kind of worked for a semi startup, and you and I discussed this, but the rate of change in this space for the past 3 or 4 years has been so fast. I can't imagine the rate of change in the next couple of years with AI. So I've taken a different stance of giving uh, the new startups more opportunities because they might solve problems faster than we ever could with some of the bigger vendors.
Oh yeah, little more agile sometimes, right? Like some of those bigger vendors, they're kind of behemoths, right? They're slow to move, like an aircraft carrier moving around by a tugboat. Whereas the startups a little more scrappy, a little more agile. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean, I think about Wiz, and we were one of the first customers with Wiz, and look at it now. I mean, you work for I don't know if you advertise your company you work for, but I mean, you work for they start small because we had discussed this with them a few years ago. They're small now; they're growing. So I think it's an exciting time, and with SaaS and cloud, the risk of onboard and offboard it's decreasing so much. Like 10 years ago, we used to have to deploy a server and rack stack some things and get the hardware, get everyone involved, and it took 6 months to roll something out. Now with cloud technologies and APIs, AI, I mean, you're up and running in a couple of weeks.
Corey, thank you so much for joining the episode today, sir.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
And big thank you to the audience. Really hope you enjoyed the episode today and learned something. Please tell others in your network to follow and listen. This has been another exciting episode of Guardians of the Data. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Guardians of the Data. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes and more, visit guardiansofthedata.show. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centro. To see how we help organizations discover and classify all of their data accurately and automatically while quickly achieving petabyte-scale data protection without the fuss, please visit centro.io. Catch you next time.